got 3 times interest rates have been cut. That's the difference between stability with Labour and instability with the party opposite.
You know, we are going to ultimately have to raise defence spending, but who's going to pay for that? Once again, that's the British taxpayer, and that might be quite a tough sell, but...
While British families struggle with rising costs, Keir Starmer admits to a staggering £22 billion black hole in the nation's finances. Yet somehow, billions continue flowing to Ukraine without hesitation.
Deploy troops in Ukraine and whether we will be able to keep the peace. They are also worried about our economic security. Can we afford all this?
The disconnect between domestic hardship and foreign spending raises serious questions about Starmer's priorities. Are we funding foreign conflicts while sacrificing our own citizens' well-being? The numbers simply don't add up. In a stunning parliamentary exchange that has left many Britons questioning the government's priorities, Prime Minister Keir Starmer made a remarkable admission. What we inherited was insecurity in our economy. We inherited a £22 billion black hole.
What we inherited was insecurity in our economy. We inherited a £22 billion black hole.
And we have now turned that around, Starmer declared, seemingly proud of his financial stewardship in these challenging times. Yet this admission raises a troubling question that demands answering. How can the same government that bemoans a £22 billion deficit continue to funnel billions of pounds to Ukraine, with barely a murmur of parliamentary debate or public consultation?
Incredibly nervous when they wake up and see the front pages of British troops being sent over potentially onto Ukrainian soil.
Yeah, but he's talking nonsense. He's not going to do that.
The contradiction is glaring. On one hand, Starmer's Labour government paints a picture of financial catastrophe left by their predecessors, a black hole so vast it supposedly necessitates belt-tightening across British public services. On the other hand, the Treasury doors swing wide open when it comes to funding Ukraine's conflict, with barely a question asked about affordability or sustainability.
Will he now change course so we can have the economic security we know we need for our national security?
This isn't about whether Ukraine deserves support. It's about transparency, priorities, and the disturbing double standard that has emerged in government spending decisions. When pressed on this apparent contradiction, Starmer's behaviour spoke volumes. His body language during parliamentary questioning revealed obvious discomfort, shifting in his seat, defensive posturing, and the kind of tense responses that suggest a man caught in a logical trap of his own making.
The world is changing fast, and we need an entirely new approach to our economy and our energy security.
These are not the reactions of someone comfortable with the consistency of their position. The sums involved are substantial. While domestic services face cuts and British families struggle with rising costs, the UK has positioned itself as one of Ukraine's most generous supporters. This generosity might be admirable if it weren't for the government's simultaneous insistence that there simply isn't enough money to go around for domestic priorities. What's particularly concerning is how these funding decisions bypass the normal scrutiny we expect in a functioning democracy. Major foreign aid packages flow freely, while discussions about improving NHS, wait times, or addressing crumbling school infrastructure are met with somber references to difficult choices and inherited financial challenges.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says that he's ready to deploy UK troops to Ukraine to enforce a potential peace deal.
The government's framing of these contradictory spending decisions reveals much about their priorities. There's always money for international commitments, framed as necessary for global security and standing with our allies, while domestic spending is approached with a rhetoric of scarcity and limitation. The message seems clear: austerity for Britons, open checkbooks for foreign conflicts. Perhaps most revealing is how Britain's contributions to Ukraine compare with those of our European neighbours.
Starmer and other European leaders are feeling that pressure, but I don't think troops on the ground are gonna make the British public feel comfortable.
The UK has established itself as one of the largest contributors to Ukraine's war effort, with aid figures significantly outpacing many other European nations. This raises a critical question. Is Britain shouldering a disproportionate burden while countries with stronger economies contribute less? Are British taxpayers effectively subsidizing the military commitments that other wealthy nations are unwilling to fully fund? This imbalance becomes even more troubling when considering the domestic sacrifices being made.
You know, we are going to ultimately have to raise defence spending, but who's going to pay for that? Once again, that's the British taxpayer, and that might be quite a tough sell, but
while other European nations maintain their social safety nets and public services, Britain cuts back on essential domestic programs while simultaneously increasing foreign military aid. The parliamentary confrontation that exposed this contradiction was not just about numbers on a balance sheet. It revealed fundamental questions about who this government truly serves.
Got 3 times interest rates have been cut. That's the difference between stability with Labour and instability with the party opposite.
Are Labour's allegiances primarily to international partners and global standing, rather than to the British citizens who elected them to office? Does Starmer feel more accountable to foreign allies than to struggling families in Birmingham, Manchester, or Glasgow? The timing couldn't be more problematic. As British families grapple with a persistent cost of living crisis, the sight of billions flowing overseas while domestic services deteriorate creates a perception that British citizens' needs have been relegated to second-tier status in their own country. The stark contradiction between Starmer's domestic penny-pinching and his overseas generosity has not gone unnoticed by economic experts. They've consistently emphasised that addressing Britain's £22 billion deficit should take precedence over maintaining lavish foreign aid commitments. This isn't just the opinion of a few critics. Polling shows a significant portion of the British public believes we should be focusing on domestic needs during these challenging economic times. What does it say about our leadership when they're more concerned with international perception than the struggles of their own voters? British families are being told to tighten their belts while our government writes blank cheques for conflicts thousands of miles away. The message is clear. Starmer's government values diplomatic standing over domestic stability.
And we have now turned that around. We've got the highest investment coming into our economy. We've got wages higher than prices.
The question remains, when will we see a government that truly puts Britain first? Or must we continue watching our hard-earned taxes disappear overseas while our own communities suffer?